Is DeAaron Fox's future in Sacramento in question? Some will believe so, as his agent met with the Sacramento Kings to kind of figure out what is the future of their player there. Also, Shams reports that Phoenix could be really interested in Jimmy Butler, but the Miami Heat may not be as incentivized to move on from Jimmy Butler as some teams have thought. And then lastly, Kyle Kuzma seems to be a player that you can all but bet that's going to be traded at this year's trade deadline. We're getting into all and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the content for today. According to Mark Stein, the Washington Wizards are reportedly eager to find a trade partner for Kyle Kuzma before the trade deadline on February 6th. And that's not a surprise at all. Apparently, according to Mark Stein as well, that some teams at the G League Showcase were talking around the possibility of the Dallas Mavericks making a move for Kyle Kuzma, which would be really interesting to see. The Dallas Mavericks are a team that I think are playing really good right now. I think they're a deep team, even deeper than what they were last year. And I have some questions on if they would really want to kind of disrupt that depth. But, you know, Kyle Kuzma is a talent. And the thing of what Kyle Kuzma is I look at Kyle Kuzma as a player who is a really good buy low option, right? The Wizards are trying to move off. They're trying to, you know, reshape that roster so that they can dig in and go for the race for the flag and all that type of stuff. And it's going to come down to what they ultimately can get back. But Kuzma's a player that we all know can be gotten out there in the trade market. And a lot of teams could make some potential sense for Kyle Kuzma, depending on, you know, what they're willing to give up and also what the role is that they have there for Kyle Kuzma. This is a guy who's averaged 20 points the last two seasons prior to this one, right? 22 and 21 points respectively on 46 and 44% shooting. He's 42% shooting so far this year, averaging 16 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist again. And while he has his limitations as well as a player, make no mistake about it, he is a player that very well could help some teams depending on it. Now, you know, we'll see what happens there with Kuzma. Jordan Poole talked about the team's motivation moving forward. He said this: so you don't want to jump ship just because it's a little bit of adversity, because everything we've been getting taught all season just happened to show tonight. So hopefully it's a good sign. We can find ways to win like this, replicate, continue to be engaged, but really embrace this, soak this all in, and see how it gets done. Now, Kyle Kuzma has been a player that's linked to the Kings. He's been linked to the Kings in some talk as well. But the Kings also have other players on their radar, like Jeremy Grant, John Collins, Jonas Valanciunas, right? And same Amick, of the Athletic is one of the people that reported this. So it really depends on, you know, what happens there. I think with the Sacramento Kings, which we're going to talk about up here next, it really depends on what they're going to do with DeAaron Fox. But Kyle Kuzma is a player that's out on the market that can help a lot of teams. It just depends on what happens there. It depends on, you know, do you have, like, Kuzma is one of those players that, you know, you tend to look at players who are on bad teams, and then they go to teams with kind of more structure, and they end up playing better, and it reminds teams that they are really good players, right? But then there's also the empty stat question there when it comes to, you know, players that put up big numbers on bad teams and things like that. So you can really go either way of the conversation when depending on where you want to go with it. But Kyle Kuzma, regardless of that, is a player that can put up points. He's a player that can help, you know, put the ball in the hoop. And that's what it comes down. Can you put the ball in the hoop more than other teams? But one of the teams that is, rumored as being interested per, the Athletic and others that could be interested in Kyle Kuzma is the Sacramento Kings. And the Kings are in such a weird position. We heard all throughout the weekend that they could look to trade DeAaron Fox. Then it came out the next day that they're actually not looking to move on from DeAaron Fox. So then when it came down to DeAaron Fox's agent, Rich Paul of Clutch Sports, as we all know, he met with Kings general manager Monty McClare and assistant general manager Wes Wilcox to discuss what's going on here with DeAaron Fox and where the Kings are going. And in no way am I blaming this player for everything that the Kings are going through, right? But when you have a player that's getting towards the end of their contract, they already turned down some money because they want to make sure that they're going to be in alignment. It doesn't really necessarily seem like there's any discontent from DeAaron Fox yet. There's definitely some questions on what the plan is going on here, and that's what it seems like it was built around. This one's per Sam Amick as well, from The Athletic is that what's the plan here is basically what that conversation and what the moment that they're having around this is. And I think they're fair to ask that question, right? You brought in DeMar DeRozan to this team who did not really fit the trajectory, in my opinion, of where it looked like this team was going in their play style and whatever. And you have Fox and Sabonis that have been a solid duo as well there. But the Sacramento Kings, you can't deny their season has been disappointing. They're 13-7. And when you look at where they were last year, you didn't expect for this to be one of the teams to take a step back. You wanted this team to be continually moving forward, to have young pieces down there, all those type of things. And unfortunately, and like I said, I'm not blaming it all on DeMar DeRozan in no way. DeMar's just a very particular player that has to play a specific way. And there's always that adjustment period between how you want to play and then how you have to play with DeMar DeRozan and how well can the players adjust to that. For what it's worth, DeAaron Fox is still averaging 26 points per game. Sabonis is still averaging 21 points per game. DeMar DeRozan is still averaging his 20 points per game, right? You still got Malik Monk with 15, Keegan Murray with 12, right? But there's definitely some fit things there. Now, with the way that this team's going, the Kings have to ask themselves a tough question here. Do they make moves that can try to convince DeAaron Fox to stay, or do they sell things off and then, maybe restart this thing over again, which for the Kings, that's always a dangerous proposition. The Kings have never really been big free agent destinations. They've never really gotten the big names there. They always have to draft well or trade for a player if they really want a player that's going to, help up their ceiling and things like that. And that's always what it comes down to, right? And DeAaron Fox was drafted there 5th overall. And, when you have a talent like that you've homegrown, that you've built, that's developed there with your team and help develop the new culture here with the Kings as well. The light, the beam, like it was exciting all last season for the Kings. And for it to come crashing down like it is now, of course, you're going to have your things that you want to blame stuff on. But overall, like it raises the questions, like people just did not expect this to be the way that we talked about the Kings this year. And if you say you did, great, you had it pegged. I did not. And I'm not going to act like I did. I did not think that this was going to be one of those teams where we talk about taking the step back that they've taken. Like they're not even in the play-in race right now. Now, it is the Western Conference. Technically, they're 2.5 games back from the 10th spot that would put them in the play-in race. But you got some tough questions that you need to ask there. And while you have a lot of teams that are already better than you that are going to be looking to kind of strengthen where they are as well on the season, you gotta ask yourself those questions on, all right, where's this team going? And are we going in a place enough to where, that we can make the right moves and we can correct this ship? And I don't expect them to be able to move on from DeMar DeRozan, but they're going to have to try to make moves that help that team. And maybe the Kyle Kuzma trade would potentially do that. Now, when DeAaron Fox, Sabonis, and DeMar DeRozan are on the court together, there's still a plus-minus of plus 29. They have a net rating of 1.6, an offensive rating of 114, and a 115, and a defensive rating of 114. The definition of basically middle of the pack. And so, this was a team that was supposed to be improving over this time, not staying mid. So they have to ask themselves that question. And moving on from a player like DeAaron Fox, it sets your team back. There's no question about that, right? And I think the question that the Kings have to ask themselves is that can they find themselves in a better situation if they move on from Fox? And I don't think that they can. I think that you are in a better position if you make the moves around it to try to make Fox happy, to keep him here. And for that, yes, there's a little bit of you got to make Clutch Ports happy as well. That's unfortunately just part of the narrative. That's part of the place that it is at this point in time. You got to try to make the things happy because Clutch Sports are going to try to do what they have to do to make sure that their clients happy. And we know they have a lot of power around this league. Whether you agree with them, with an agency having that much power or not, they do, right? And so now that you've had that sit down with Rich Paul, what comes out of that, right? Is there a set of moves? Is there a benchmark that you can do? You still can offer De'Aaron Fox the most money. And I think that that's always something that you have to, that teams have to look at, and players are very well aware of as well, as we just have players in Clutch Sports is definitely going to be aware of that. You have to ask that question as you move forward. You got 1 year left of De'Aaron Fox for sure after this. He's an unrestricted free agent after the 2025-26 season. So you have between now and then to make a decision, to make your roster in a place where it makes the most sense for De'Aaron Fox to sit this thing out and sit it through. If not, you may have to make a decision to move him, maybe not at this trade deadline, maybe not in the offseason, but between now and next trade deadline, you have to make a decision because you cannot afford for De'Aaron Fox to walk away for nothing. And that's the place where this Kings team finds themselves in. You can't play hardball with Fox. You either have to make him happy by either changing the makeup of your team enough, or you have to make him happy and sending him to a team that he wants to go to. And you have to do that, right? You have to try to find that deal for your player. And, you never know how things are going to shake out. You just never know. And so that's going to be something that you got to continually watch now, is this, because I tell you what, if DeAaron Fox becomes available, if he becomes out in the market to where the Kings do shop him, they're going to have a lot of teams knocking at that door. Now, I don't know if the level of moves there are going to be something that they can try to piece something together and keep it moving forward, or if that's going to be the precursor, then maybe you have to move Sabonis down the road. Maybe you keep Keegan. Maybe you keep some of the players there, the Kevin Huerter and some other players. But ultimately, you got a lot of decisions that you need to make about this roster sooner rather than later, because you can't let it go too long before you're stuck holding nothing and you're stuck, right? And that's not really what you want, where you want to be at. You do not want to be in that place with this roster if you can avoid it. And so that's going to be a tough place for this team to be in. They're going to have to make some tough decisions, and we'll see what's going to come out of it. But let me know what you guys think down below. Do you see this team in the Sacramento Kings as being a team that eventually has to move on from DeAaron Fox, or do you think that they can make enough moves to where it makes sense for them to keep DeAaron Fox and they can get back on pace to where it looked like they were going at the end of last season? Let me know what you guys think on all that down below. But with that said, there's another player that's talked a lot about in trade markets, and this one comes from Sham Charania, who reported that the Phoenix Suns are among the teams that are atop of Jimmy Butler's list, as far as the top of teams that he could want to go to. Charania also mentioned the Golden State Warriors, the Dallas Mavericks, as teams that could very well be in that. But it seems like right now the Suns have some genuine interest in making a move for Jimmy Butler. Now, this one comes from Mark Stein as well, is that the interest in Jimmy Butler is absolutely genuine when it comes down to it. They would have to include Bradley Beal in the deal to make it work, but Beal would have to waive his no trade clause in order to make this deal work. Now, is Miami willing to make a swap for Jimmy Butler for Bradley Beal? That's the question that's there. Now, it's been reported as well that Bradley Beal may not be willing to waive his no trade clause. That does come from Sham saying this. He would also need to waive his no trade clause to make the deal happen, with reporting that there are zero indications that he would be willing to do so. So it seems like the Suns still have that interest in Jimmy Butler, but there are that doubts if Bradley Beal would waive that no trade clause to make that happen. And that's a situation where, I mean, unfortunately, that's the point of a player having a no trade clause. They own the power in that situation. And while Bradley Beal hasn't necessarily played a lot for the Suns team, and the Suns, he is the piece on the Suns team that you look, if you can move and get something in for, it could definitely help push it. The Suns right now are also a team that's, as of right now, on the outside looking in of the play-in tournament, but we know that they can play well enough. They've played well enough to be in that before. All it takes is for a hot week from Kevin Durant or whatever to make that happen, but you have your doubts around it. And, as I said, when it came down to the Kings, there are going to be a lot of teams at this trade deadline, especially in the Western Conference, that are looking to make moves to solidify their playoff run. And the Suns very well could be one of those. And it really depends on, do the Miami Heat bite on what the Suns have to offer? And then even if they do, is there enough there with Bradley Beal being willing to waive his no trade clause to facilitate it all happening? Now, the Miami Heat sit in an interesting scenario as well, because it seems like right now the Heat are not in a rush to trade Jimmy Butler, mainly because Pat Riley is looking at the situation and saying there's only one team really out in the free agent market this upcoming summer that's going to have the money to sign Jimmy Butler outright. This one comes from Mark Stein saying this. Only Brooklyn is currently on course to have the sort of salary cap space required to sign Butler outright in the summer. And because of that, it seems like right now the Miami Heat could very well play hardball in the sense of saying we're not going to facilitate any signing trades, which would make it very difficult for Jimmy Butler, even if he does opt out of that contract, to sign with another team that is desirable. He would kind of need the Miami Heat to be a team to facilitate a sign and trade in that place. So seems like right now the Miami Heat are willing to play hardball right now. Even Mark Stein saying this, as covered here on December 14th, Miami is extremely confident that Butler won't be able to leave in free agency this summer. If he if he indeed goes through by bypassing his $52.4 million player option next season without the Heat's help in a sign-and trade. And that is how a front office operates intelligently. And so we'll see what happens there. This is something to keep watching out for and to seeing how it develops, because I tell you what, if the Miami Heat are willing to play hardball with Jimmy Butler, it could throw a monkey wrench in his whole plan, because he may have to re-sign with the Miami Heat and then try to hope for a trade later. Let me know what you guys think on all that down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at NBA Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show @gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything basketball related. And I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.